everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we will be talking about how Kamala Harris is surging when it comes to fundraising in the Democratic Party primarily, and what that means, really, the bigger picture for the 2024 presidential election. So obviously, as I'm sure all of you watching now know, yesterday morning, Joe Biden announced that he would withdraw from the presidential race. He was dropping out of the race, and he, right after that, endorsed his vice president, Kamala Harris. Now, obviously, this had been floated for weeks. Many, almost 40 or so Democratic lawmakers called on him to drop out, and then donors were pulling away from the campaign since he basically had almost zero chance to win. I mean, his chances were just abysmal. And apparently, his closest advisors did present to him the fact that he really had zero path to victory. So yesterday, he did announce that he was dropping out of the presidential race, and again, he endorsed Kamala Harris. Now, I believe this was a very good move on the Democrats, and this is perfectly demonstrated why I think this in terms of fundraising. So the Kamala Harris campaign has now raised $81 million in the first 24 hours as Harris as the candidate. $81 million. That may be a record. I'm not positive on that, but it's a record for 24 hours, or very close to being a record for 24 hours. This is absolutely historic. $81 million is insane. I mean, think about that. $81 million raised just from small dollar donations. This is just small dollar donations. People going on KamalaHarris.com and donating to the campaign. That raised $81 million. So there's clear energy around Kamala Harris now as the nominee, and it appears that Democrats are very excited. And, when it comes to money, it's so big, and it shows how, when you look at Biden's fundraising, this, boost from Harris shows how Democrats were just not excited about Biden. I mean, after the Trump assassination attempt especially, but, even before that, Trump closed that huge fundraising gap between him and Biden. Very notably, months ago, Trump was hugely trailing Biden in terms of fundraising. Biden was running a great fundraising game. I mean, he was running a great fundraising game. He was getting millions of dollars at certain fundraisers and everything. The campaign was doing great with money. And then Trump was able to flip the tide, or turn the tide, I should say. After the assassination attempt, after, of course, well, the mugshot was last year, but whatever. After all of these events, Donald Trump eventually, gained on President Biden. And at one point, Trump's campaign had 116 million at the end of May, compared to 92 million from Joe Biden. So, I mean, Biden was losing on all fronts now, especially after the donors pulled out of the campaign after the debate in a way to force him out, which I do think was the primary factor why Joe Biden ended up dropping out. But again, what I was saying before, this fundraising boost after Harris, is basically virtually what we're seeing from Democratic endorsements. The presumptive Democratic nominee of the party just shows how Democrats are now so much more excited about this election with Harris as the nominee than Joe Biden. CBS conducted a poll. We see that they asked the question, Biden stepping aside as the nominee makes you more motivated to vote, does not change your motivation, less motivated, or depends on who the nominee is. And what we see is that 49% say that it doesn't change the motivation. Those are the vote blue no matter who type, the diehard Democrats. 6%, very little, almost nothing, are less motivated to vote. I guess those are the diehard Biden supporters. And then 6% depends on who the nominee is. But look at that number. 39% of Democrats are now more motivated to vote without Biden as the nominee. This number is incredible. It's hard to process that 39% of the voters clearly weren't that happy with Biden, and they are so much more motivated to vote with Harris, or as whoever it may be, with just Biden gone as the nominee. So, Harris, I think, really solidifies so many voter blocks that were being lost with Joe Biden. Traditionally, very Democratic voter blocks who are registered Democrats, always vote Democratic, but weren't that excited about Harris. Most notably is the youth vote. Harris, even though she is 60, which is much younger than Joe Biden, much younger than Donald Trump, she's the youngest candidate, really, besides Chase Oliver of the Libertarian Party. But, I mean, she looks and acts much younger than 60, really, from what, most people have that opinion as well. But she really brings back the youth vote. Of course, the youth vote is not going to be that enthusiastic about an 80-year-old president who many believe is senile. And the youth vote, they see clips constantly on TikTok and social media, whatever, of Biden falling downstairs, stumbling over his words like I just did, just acting completely senile. And, they're going to be much more motivated to vote for someone who is much younger, is actually competent, and is actually funny. I mean, Kamala Harris really has a sense of humor. I'm sure all of you have seen the clips. But not only that, not only just her as herself, but when it comes to the issue of Gaza, I think that Kamala Harris brings back much of the youth vote that was disillusioned by Biden because of his position on Gaza. Months and months and months ago, a long time ago, shortly after the war even began in Gaza, Kamala Harris called for a ceasefire immediately. She can use that, to get these youth voters back who were, shifting away from Biden because of his position on Gaza. As well, another voter bloc that Harris brings back, African Americans, obviously, or even minorities just in general. Kamala Harris is an African American and Indian American woman that, Biden was really struggling among African Americans. Harris will probably be able to bring that back. So what this does is that it solidifies these blue states that should be going to Biden in a normal election, but they were looking increasingly competitive. Apparently, there were reports that Biden did drop out in the end because his advisors showed him that he was not only just losing all the traditional swing states, but that he was behind in very Democratic states like New Mexico, Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire that voted for Biden by upwards of 10 points in 2020. So, with Kamala Harris bringing back these traditional Democratic voters, these registered Democrats, back to the party, back to the Democratic nominee, I think, it might help in some swing states, but it helps primarily in these more Democratic states that have urban areas where with youth voters, with African American voters, with Gaza-centered voters. So what that does is, makes these states that were looking very competitive with Biden as the nominee now fall into the Kamala Harris column, and she really doesn't have to try that hard anymore to win these voters. That's New Mexico, Minnesota, Nebraska second, New Jersey, Virginia, New Hampshire, and Maine. I'm not saying all of them are now not competitive at all. I think that the overwhelmingly white states like New Hampshire and Maine might still be a little competitive, but whatever. It definitely helps with Kamala Harris being the Democratic nominee when it comes to pulling back these disillusioned Democratic voters. So thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe down below. It helps out a lot. We're trying to get to 10,000 subscribers. We just crossed 3,000. Thank you all so much for that. Drop a comment to let me hear your thoughts, and I will see you all next time.